crowd is standing. 50,000 of them. Seeing their team go behind by 1 point. Hang on to your hats. Here come the Steelers out of the huddle. It's down to one big play. 4th down and 10 yards to go. Harry Bradshaw at the controls. And Bradshaw back and looking again. Bradshaw running out of the pocket. Looking for somebody to throw to. Fires it downfield. And there's a collision. It's caught out of the air. The ball is pulled in by Franco Harris. Harris is going for a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
And good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition here of another Steeler Sunday. Getting ready right now. It is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers with their 21st home opener at Heinz Field. And what better way to open it up? A classic one. We got a good one in store for you today. Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I know it's going to take some time getting used to many fans as you see them, as they're no longer the Oakland Bears. They're the Las Vegas Raiders coming into Heinz Field. They own the all-time regular season series versus Pittsburgh Steelers at 13-10. And also, when you include the playoffs, the Raiders are 16-13 lifetime versus the Steelers as they split in the playoffs, going 3-3. And just imagine, a lot of it to this day, the emotion more so going into this game when you really think about it. How much I think, to be honest with you, I think both fan bases will always be ready to go whenever it's Steelers versus Raiders. But I think especially Raiders fans, for whatever reason, seem to come up a little bit more amped to this, just for the simple fact of the play you just heard a few moments ago, the immaculate reception. And in their mind, it was called the immaculate deception, a play that should not count. The only question was, when we look at Frenchie Fuqua, did the ball hit twice? Or not? I remember, that the ball would hit an offensive player twice, it would not count as the play would have been blown dead. But instead it was bang, bang play. It looked like the ball could either hit the Raider defender or Fuqua in that play. And you look at all the years turmoil that it's caused from a Raiders standpoint, especially Raiders fans when we look at it. And it was just really an interesting time by this. For the Steelers, they were the true benefactors of this, yes. Going on to finally win their first ever playoff series, which eventually set them up for further playoff success, winning their pair of Super Bowls, 4 Super Bowls, about 2 years later. And you look at the Oakland Raiders right there, at that point in time, too. They were already a frustrated bunch right there. They only been to the Super Bowl one other time, and that was still under the AFL banner. In that time. And when you look at what the Raiders had to overcome and what they had to do, they just felt like, they were the bridesmaids for a long time. And just felt like they had superiority over the Steelers at that time. When you looked at them and back in 1967, they beat the Houston Oilers, go to the Super Bowl, only lose to the Green Bay. They get smoked 33-14. And what would happen years to come with the Oakland Raiders? They'd be brought up in the conference championship games to get to the Super Bowl. When you look at it, all this time, when you really take a look at it, they came up short at least three other times prior to that. Losing to the Joe Namath and his New York Jets, Land Dustin and the Kansas City Chiefs, which, by the way, those teams broke through to be the first ever AFL teams to finally beat an NFL team in the first 4 Super Bowls right there. And then they will go on to lose again to the Baltimore Colts with Johnny Unitas still quarterbacking right there. And which, by the way, Ted Hendricks, who would also later become a Raider, he won his very first Super Bowl with that Baltimore Colts team, upsetting the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl V with a game-winning field goal kick, which the game where we saw many people saw Johnny Unitas got knocked out of the game, I believe, at the end of halftime, around that time. But the Colts still had a good enough defense. And here we are. I mean, the Raiders, from their standpoint, they really felt like they had their superiority. I mean, the Steelers were just learning how to win at this point. And you remember me highlighting too, Najee Harris. I mean, listen, he didn't have the best of games last week. I mean, going in there versus the Buffalo Bills, but at the same time too, when you look at it, his performance. I mean, you take a look at, for what he's been able to do. In that contest, versus the Buffalo Bills, and trying to, make some early impressions. Listen, I told you before, it took a while for Franco Harris to get going in his career. When you look at, Najee Harris had 45 yards rushing. And then when you look at Franco Harris, once again, too, his NFL career, I think it didn't come till, let's see, his numbers right here for his first ever 100-yard rushing game in this contest. It didn't come until his fifth game of the season against the Houston Oilers. So, the Steelers will be definitely looking to improve. A lot of things right there. I definitely would like to see the run game get a little bit more involved. But for right now, here we go right now. Steelers looking to earn their 17th victory at Heinz Field. And we look at the Pittsburgh Steelers lifetime in regards to home openers. And speaking of which, too, I do want to point out here, as we look at, this will be the first time that they'll be in front of full attendance of live fans. We saw a decent amount of fans. I think it was like around over 40,000 in the preseason game versus Detroit Lions this past August. But last time regular season-wise, it was Sunday Night Football versus Buffalo Bills. Over 64,000 in that game, which was the start of a 3-game losing streak. Steelers, at that point, they only had to win 2 out of the remaining 3 games with some help to reach the playoffs or just win out. They had control of their own destiny, lost that game, only scoring 10 points. I believe the final score and that one for the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Buffalo Bills, I believe that one was 17-10, and a very highly contested battle right there. A very good defensive battle, by the way. When you look at that game, but the only way either team pulled away was until the fourth quarter, when Josh Allen threw a 14-yard touchdown pass to Tyler Kroft with 7:55 remaining in the fourth quarter. In that game, and keep in mind the Steelers' last set of points came late. Came early in the third quarter where they went up 10-7, and eventually the Bills would tie early in the fourth quarter. But 3-game losing streak, unfortunately, was set up. But at the same time, too, you look at a guy like Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger, he's been a guy, who's even alluded to. One of the reasons why he came back for an 18th season was to play in front of those fans. Just to get the rush of the crowd. And you better darn well believe, that's going to be one of the things, he's going to be paying attention to. Because this is a guy right here who definitely prides himself on giving his utmost best. And I don't blame him. Last year, it was a different set of circumstances. We're still sort of in the pandemic year. We still have our restrictions, but I gotta admit, just watching this year across the board, with sports in general, I could go back as early to like baseball, as we could say, or hockey playoffs. I'll even dare say the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, where we really started to see little but surely fans coming back in attendance, were like, where was the Pittsburgh Penguins, unfortunately losing in 6 games to the New York Islanders. I mean, you just saw like the raw most of the fans coming back right there. Then you saw it with baseball right there. I mean, just playing in front of capacity fans. And then now the NFL and the Steelers versus Bills. I mean, it was just really cool to see Steeler Nation once again show why they're Steeler Nation over a fan base as Bills Mafia. Bills Mafia, they definitely got an awesome fan base. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, for Steelers fans and Steeler Nation, boy, did they travel well. And they really continue to remind why they have the best fan base, I mean, in the NFL, arguably. So with this right now, Ben Roethlisberger in quoting, he said, "I don't want to think too much about it because it'll probably be too exciting. So I'm trying to temper my excitement right now," according to Roethlisberger. Which, by the way, he'll need 3 touchdown passes to become the 8th player in NFL history with 400 in his career going into this. As we look at that right now. And 400 touchdown passes, that would definitely be a marvelous feat right there. And for becoming the 8th guy to be on that list, I mean, it's pretty freaking amazing right there. The other previous 7 who have a 400 or more, of course, Tom Brady, who was number 1 on the all-time touchdown list with 585, who surpassed Drew Brees. Tom Brady's got 585, Drew Brees 571. You got Peyton Manning, 3rd on this list, Hall of Famer, 539, along with other fellow Hall of Famers, Brett Favre, 508. Dan Marino, who comes after Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has got 421. Then you got Dan Marino at 420, and Aaron Rodgers at 412. And Ben Roethlisberger, he's able to get that number today. I mean, like 3 touchdown passes. I mean, to make it for 400. I mean, just let this sink in for a moment. Amongst his current group of players, he'll become the 3rd player currently playing with 400 touchdown passes or more. I mean, which is pretty darn amazing. I mean, you look at a guy like Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, yes, he hasn't won league MVP or Super Bowl MVP. But I mean, when you look at what the thing alone from this standpoint, for the fact that they didn't have a legitimate franchise quarterback since Terry Bradshaw originally retired after the 1983 season. I mean, his final game was clearly against the New York Jets, I think, for a quarter or two. And his shoulder, I mean, pretty much was just coming out, or his elbow, I mean, basically. And you know he was in a lot of pain right there. I mean, don't forget, too, I mean, he also injured himself, too. I mean, the prior year, too, Terry Bradshaw, I mean, who got hurt, I mean, basically. And by the way, I mean, his elbow surgery, don't forget, it also started in training camp of 1982. And one of the things he did mention, too, by the way, was that, thank God for the 9-game season that year, because if he would have had to go a full year playing for that, he's not too sure if he would have been able to play through that as much, because he did kind of catch a little bit of a break right here at that time before it finally gave in during the Jets game, where he was eventually done for good and just was not the same guy. But I mean, Bradshaw right there, I mean, it was just he was just an icon right there. I mean, definitely, I'm sure one of the guys who had his feet held to the fire about what he saw, but not really. I mean, he was knocked down, I think, when the play happened with that immaculate reception. And there we go. But speaking of which, Steelers and Raiders right now, since playing in Heinz Field, the Steelers have been able to win 4 out of the previous 6 games played at Heinz Field. And the only 2 games that they lost to the Raiders at Heinz Field was back in 2002 Sunday Night Football. That was, of course, you saw guys like Rich Gannon, Jerry Rice, Tim Brown on that team right there, who eventually went to the Super Bowl, only ended up losing to the Bucs that season. Jon Gruden was not the head coach. It was actually Bill Callahan. He was a coach who replaced Jon Gruden, who was actually traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who ousted his former team. And then you had 2009, the year the Steelers were defending Super Bowl champions. And the frustrating thing about that game back in 2009, I mean, when you look at it too, I mean, that was another one. I think they had like a meltdown in the fourth quarter versus the Oakland Raiders. I mean, in that contest. And you looked at it right there too. I mean, the Steelers had about a 4-point lead with under 2 minutes to go. They were up 24-20. Only for the Oakland Raiders, Bruce Gradkowski, to march down the field and eventually throw an 11-yard touchdown pass to Lewis Murphy with 9 seconds left to go with the extra point, 27-24. So they had their frustrations too. Another game I'll definitely point out too, where the Steelers had a lead against the Oakland Raiders, which was very frustrating to watch. This was in Oakland. I'll never forget this one. This was a late Sunday afternoon game. I mean, of course, but you look in this game right here where the Steelers were up by 10 points, going into the fourth quarter. They blew the 10-point lead. They were shut out in the fourth quarter. I mean, the Raiders would score 13 unanswered points to beat the Steelers by a field goal, 34-31. I mean, and that was it right there. And the Raiders, I mean, for the most part, they have found a way to have this team's number for however you look at it. But right now, I got to tell you right now, this is a game right now. I mean, the Steelers, they do not want to overlook. Mike Tomlin is also familiar with Jon Gruden. I mean, remember, he was an assistant coach under Jon Gruden, Tony Dungy's former squad right there, that eventually saw them win the Super Bowl. They finally got over that hump. And, I mean, Mike Tomlin will always have Tony Dungy in high regards. I mean, his mentors, of course, no doubt about that. But, I mean, having to play with Jon Gruden and basically just going into this right now, I mean, he's still savvy enough in Tomlin's eyes to be an offensive guru at this stage of his coaching career. Jon Gruden is. Say what you will at the end of the day about how he's had all this trust with the Raiders organization. I mean, for a 10-year contract, I mean, about $10 million a year, and you got Mike Tomlin, who's got about $38 million for 4 years. I mean, still, I mean, Mike Tomlin is clearly the better coach in this situation. The only thing I will say to Jon Gruden's credit, he has done it successfully with 2 other teams. I mean, you could argue, I mean, like the Raiders, I mean, he did with a team that was transitioning back into a playoff team, made a good run, got him as far as the AFC Championship game over 20 years ago. And then Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I mean, he finished a job that Tony Dungy could not. That was frustrating. Getting over the Philadelphia Eagles finally, getting past them out of the first round, and then this time to beat them in the NFC Conference Championship game, and finally win that first ever Super Bowl. So at the same time, I think Gruden, he still deserves a little bit of credit. That was clearly Tony Dungy's team, but Jon Gruden, at the end of the day, he provided the spark that was needed for that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. I mean, the biggest thing that was always being complained about from the defense side from guys like Warren Sapp, and even Derek Brooks or whoever on that defense, or John Lynch, they always felt like that the offense was not being held to the same standard that the defense was. And that was not cool with some of the veteran Bucs players on that team, and really took a very exception to that. And this is what we get into right now. But for today's matchup right now, as we look at it, TJ Watt, he even got in the fun too. I'm super excited, according to TJ. It seems like my rookie year since I've seen fans at Heinz Field. I was jealous of the Bills last week for having their fans there. Hopefully we can get as loud as Heinz Field can possibly get. Now let's go to the tail of the tape right now. Coaching matchup. I mean, Jon Gruden was saying going to this matchup, they're going to be a challenge for the Jon Gruden. They're obviously added Joe Schobert and Melvin Ingram, a couple really good veteran players to go with TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. They're well coached. Keith Butler does a great job, and they too are unorthodox. They present a lot of different looks, and we have our work cut out for us on a short week. Now, Jon Gruden, you look at a guy like him. I mean, a guy who has been to the playoffs 10 times. I mean, 5 times, excuse me, in his coaching career. And then you got a guy like Mike Tomlin, end of the day, who has been to the playoffs plenty of times in his overall coaching career. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, when you look at the times he has been there, I mean, he's been to the playoffs 9 times. I mean, and has been have an outstanding job in this regard. I mean, 154 career victories, 86 losses, and a tie. And then you look at Jon Gruden's record right here going into this game. Jon Gruden, lifetime career-wise, he has 111 career victories, 106 losses. And right now, I mean, the pressure is on him. It's time right now, I mean, for one of his grueling grinders, I guess, say, if you will, to get going in this contest. Because right now, I mean, the Raiders, they're coming off a very impressive upset over the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football. And that's the only thing that concerns me going to this matchup is how much they're going to be building off of that. If anything, I would say for the Steelers, this contest, they cannot let their guard down. And I did mention before, I mean, when you look at like some of the stuff going to this matchup, I mean, right now, as far as like the coaches right now, I mean, the Oakland Raiders right now, for right now, I mean, got a pretty good coaching staff pretty much assembled right now. And you look at like some of the people that came in here right now. I mean, one of the guys that that Mike Tomlin highlighted here is Rob Marinelli, a very familiar coach with him when they were paired together with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And of course, you have Gus Bradley too, by the way. I mean, Gus Bradley right now, who came over from the LA Chargers. I mean, did a good job. I mean, with their squad. I mean, keeping their defense in total yards 10th right there. I had. I mean, they did a pretty good job right there. I mean, one thing that I think will be intriguing right now for this matchup right now. I mean, Rob Marinelli. I mean, this guy is about a seasoned veteran. I mean, a very damn good defensive coach. Once again, a familiar spot on the defensive line. And you look at the Raiders going into this matchup, I mean, versus Steelers right now. I mean, into this game, definitely going to have their work cut out for them in today's contest. I mean, the Vegas Raiders, by the way, too, when you look at some of the guys on here, when you look at like a Denzel Perryman or Jonathan Abraham right here, I mean, Max Crosby is a guy who's going to be one guy to watch out for, in my opinion. So when you look at, let's go look at the injury report once again, just to recap. Steelers, they have listed on their injury report backup defensive end Carlos Davis. He is out due to a knee injury for this contest. Basically, for this matchup, Carlos Davis, he did not practice on Thursday and Friday. He was limited on Wednesday. He was rolled out. Then you got Joe Hayden, Devin Bush, and Zach Gentry. They are questionable, with Hayden and Bush with groin injuries and Zach Gentry with an ankle. So you got two starters that could be very key in this game that will be out. But for the Raiders side, when you look at it too, as far as them, they will be without 5 players, 3 starters in here. Alec Ingold, fullback. No, excuse me. Josh Jacobs, running back. Yeah, he is rolled out for this game due to a toe and ankle. He did not practice all week. Left guard, Richey Incognito. He was listed with a calf injury, did not practice all week. He is ruled out of the game. And then you also have Nick Katowski, middle linebacker, who was in concussion protocol. He did not practice all week. He is ruled out for this contest. The other 2 people who are out for this game, not going to be very key, but you got backup quarterback Marcus Mariota. He was dealing with a quad injury. And then you got Roderick Teamer, safety, dealing with an ankle injury. He did not practice all week. But as far as your questionable players going to this game, both backups, by the way, Carl Nassib, defensive end, pectoral and toe, not practiced on Wednesday, limited on Thursday and Friday. Then you got Darius Philon, backup defensive tackle, knee. He was added on the injury report on Thursday. He was limited on Thursday and not practiced on Friday. He is questionable. So there you have it right there. Steelers will be out 1 player for sure, which is one of their backup defensive ends. But you got the Raiders out with 5 players. So expect the Raiders go to the air in this one for this one. Which is going to leave me right now as we get ready to wrap this thing up. Keys to the game. And I'll tell you one thing. One guy I want to see get a little bit more involvement with this offense. Granted, it's only the second week of the second game of the season, but why not? I think if anything, I mean, if Deontay Johnson continues to drop passes, I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a very good touchdown pass, overcoming a lot of failures from a year ago from being benched versus Bills game. That guy really showed a lot of heart. Eventually caught the game-winning touchdown pass and put them up for good, 13-10. I mean, at that point in that contest. But, I mean, when we look at here, and for the most part, I mean, 13-10, yeah. And you look at what they were able to do. They were able to finish that game out 23-16. So, if anything, I think it's time that we see the Steelers go back to involving the tight ends a lot more, something that they rarely do in their offense. I mean, you got a guy like Pat Freiermuth right now. I mean, if you got Eric Ebron being questionable to go into this game right now, I mean, with a groin injury, I mean, why not involve Freiermuth? I think Freiermuth right now, I see a little bit of not only Heath Miller, but Jesse James, the way he leaps up and grabs the ball too. And also made a really good block last week versus the Bills. I mean, on the sweeping handoff to Chase Claypool. So if anything, I think Freiermuth, I like to see him get a little bit involved with tight ends more. I think that has to be very pivotal. It shows a well-balanced offensive attack, in my opinion, from a strategic standpoint. Also, too, you want to build Najee Harris's confidence early by feeding him the ball. I mean, the Raiders were 24th in defending the run. They were at the top of their game and stuffing opponents at 19%, which is 13th. Key guy to pay attention to forward, like I just mentioned moments ago, is going to be their defensive end, Max Crosby. And Max Crosby, like I said, watch out for this guy. He leads this team as a defensive end and tackles for loss 2 years in a row right there. You look at last year, 2020, he had 14 tackles for loss. He had 6 more than the guy that was second on this, and Nicholas Morrow, who's an outside linebacker. He had 8, but, I mean, this guy seems to be a disruptor right here. So, if anything, I mean, he's the guy who I think could be pretty dangerous in this contest. And he also had fumble recovery last year, 13 quarterback hits. So, if anything, I think the matchup to be paid attention to, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, going into this matchup, I mean, you got right defense and Max Crosby here, I mean, for the most part. But then you also got to look at right now, too, I mean, on the Steelers' offensive line, who would be called into challenge, I mean, for that? I would imagine, I mean, for that, when you look at, I mean, it's going to probably be Kevin Dotson versus Max Crosby in that matchup, I would imagine. So let's see how Dotson does in that situation. Guy who came a little bit out of shape because of too much muscle mass, what we heard in the reports for Dejan Kovacevic back in June. So we'll see how that goes. And then, yeah, I think Najee Harris right now. Listen, let's just take a step back. Give this guy a few more games. I think he can get going. But then last key right here for this game, I want to see more better efficiency in the red zone. They were 1 for 3 last week in the red zone in this contest right here. Last year, I mean, there were 11 red zone scoring. I think they could bump that up a little bit in today's game for today's matchup. You want to attack that red zone, put the pressure on the Raiders to try and play comeback. You want to set the tempo by pumping out your leads early, in my opinion. And last but not least, stay disciplined on offense with pre-snap penalties right there and defense. Remember, they had 2 or 3 in the first half to only finish out with 5 for the game versus the Bills. Bills had 8 penalties in that game, still finished up with 5. So disciplined football, and there you have it. That's going to be this edition for Show Blitz of the Steelers vs. Raiders pregame show here of the Non Steel Podcast.